hop on the live stream, see what it looks like. It is recording anyway, so it's not going to be a huge issue if the 6 people who watch the live stream don't get to see it, but because most of this is about making great content for later on anyway. So let's just hop on and see what's going on. Oh yeah, no, the live stream quality is pretty good. So yeah, no worries there at all. I think we're going to be fine. Beautiful. Beautiful. How's your audio on your end? Can you hear me pretty well?
Perfect.
Okay, I think we're going to be fine then. A little intro and we'll crack into it, hey? Now your camera's disappeared. Ash,
Yeah,
what?
you've disappeared. You've disappeared as well. I don't know what's going on.
No, this has never happened before. I'm gonna go. No one watches it
Yeah,
anyway today.
the sound's kind of dropping out a little bit now, Alex. It wasn't before.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is let the show before. I'm gonna go and just I'll get back. I've never said had this before, but we'll just be back in a couple minutes. Hey, sound good?
Worries.
No worries. I'm just gonna leave the studio and then come back. I'm not gonna end the whole session. So I'll see you in a moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Oh, we're back. We're back. I think we're gonna be. I think I'm here. Here we go. Me off. I turn it back on again, and really weird. I was yeah, just before and nothing. It's Western Australia, and we're just never meant to be together.
We'll see.
But, try it again. Try it again. We looks like so, the live streamer. I think here, but live for that whole thing.
That's okay. I didn't do anything weird.
Yeah. So. Oh, no, you to. Or, yeah, sitting there. That's all. It all looks nice. Anyway, welcome back to the Coaches to the Moon podcast, ladies and gentlemen. After a very rocky start on the recording, I'm honored and glad to be here with Tash Hanham. She's a women's empowerment and business mentor. She's the author of the Tash Diaries. It's a bit of work, so we'll definitely get into that jug as well. Temporarily in Tash being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the great intro, and I'm really excited to be here. And thanks for persisting through the tech.
Oh, yeah, good one. It's okay. Those little blemishes on the how easy technology makes our life and business, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah, can't complain too much about the fact that we're meeting people across the other side of the world, and every now and then it's not that easy. So, yeah, no, not seeing the fog. It's actually much harder. Everyone's using a laptop, but
Yeah.
hey, I wanted to say something to you. Pronounce it correctly. Hello for Atu.
I love it. Fagalafatu. You've been
Fakalafatu.
doing,
There we go.
yeah,
There we
very
go.
good.
You're from Norway, which is honestly not something,
Right.
yeah, not, but it's a beautiful place surrounded by the ocean, kind of like New Zealand. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's part of the Polynesian islands. Probably people would be more familiar with Fiji,
Mm.
Samoa, the Cook Islands. So that's some of the neighboring islands. And then Niue is one of those little islands, but it's got a much smaller population. So if you bump into a Niuean, especially in Australia, you're doing pretty well.
Well, fun fact. Apparently, there's more Niueans living outside of Niue than within it.
Yes, yes, that is correct. So I think there's 1,600 people currently on the island, and there's probably about 20,000 Niueans scattered between New Zealand and Australia.
Oh, interesting. 100 people, size of my high school. It's crazy, hey.
It is. It is. It really is. It's
What
tiny.
what was that like growing up in such a small little island?
Well, I actually was born there, and I was only year of my life. So my
Hmm.
dad's Aussie and my mum is Niuean. So she was raised on the island, and then they had me. It was a bit tricky in terms of getting work and that sort of thing, and so they ended up relocating back to Perth. And so I was actually raised in Perth. I've got four. I think once they had a few, I realised it was a bit hard to raise the whole family. But my husband and I had intentions of taking our kids there to live on the island this year. Now, a lot of the COVID stuff has settled a bit and allow us to have some time on the island. And yeah, the kids get to learn about that side of their heritage, learn the language, go to school there. Yeah, and just enjoy living island life, which is pretty cool.
That is super cool. I saw about it on that What Happy podcast with that lovely fellow.
Yes.
'Cause I did his show as well, and either we did it on the same or he wears a shirt every time the podcast because exactly the same. And I saw you say that, and I was like, what is this Pacific? What is this? So I did some digging, and yeah, Niue, what a great. That's going to be awesome. Well, let's touch on. You got your three kids.
So I've got a 10-year-old daughter, 8-year-old middle boy, and my youngest boy who is 3.
Yeah, or a 5-year-old, 3-year-old.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's great. Well done. You know, on your fest juggler of life admin, busy working mum, home cook, all those sorts of things. Um, just like a completely, I suppose, intangible question. Do you think that there's much more acceptance these days of their personal brand? Like, I think about maybe years ago for people, it's like you feel like they wouldn't want to have their kids at the office, or they wouldn't want to talk much about like their wife and kids, or say they're just like straight up and down business people. But now in this coaching online space, you saying on your web, I'm not a life help you with your life. So came home as me as well. I have my twins all over social media. That sort of where do you think that? Do you think that level of acceptance is growing, and do you think it actually, helps as part of your brand?
Oh, 100%. And I can't speak for everyone across all industries, but I believe in terms of the tech world opening up, a lot of people started, working from home. And so suddenly you were seeing inside of people's, home offices or lounge rooms. And I think COVID, in terms of one of the things it did do, was it's really opened things up and allowed people to work more flexibly. You have gained more insight, I think, into people by the function that a lot of people from home. And I suppose for me personally, I am a mum, and a lot of the women I attract to work with are mums, just by nature of the fact that I suppose my journey and the stories I share, and my experiences probably resonate more from that juggle of having young children, I guess, finding your own path, and trying to find some happy mix in between. So I'm always very open about, if someone's doing a session and they need to have a talk, or there's a kid coming in and out, like that happens, and it happens to me, although I try not to do it so much when I'm holding the session. Certainly very accepting and open of the fact that that's life, like that's the reality of where people are at, a lot of these women, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to, have the ease of going somewhere to do stuff. A lot of the work I do is actually online, and that does afford that flexibility that a lot of these people need. So it works beautifully for me. And yeah, I think the relatable side of like not just having the business front, because I guess mine is very much built around my own personal journey, and and that's what makes people want to work with me if they relate to that story. So it kind of makes sense for me anyway.
I think you nailed it. I think relatability and authenticity, together are huge parts of marketing your brand, or face that so like yourself, or people like Mark Zuckerberg, that sort of thing, or like knowing the families and the real. Uh, I think super important. You don't have to be our business kind of personality anymore. I think that the messiness of life is worming its way into the way we do business, and I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, look, I agree.
Yeah, well, I do the same. I try to, when I'm being paid to do something, I try to use around too much and get to the value. I think some very on the days when that podcast toddlers is having the biggest meltdown of meltdowns in the room right next to me, and that definitely wormed its way into the audio. But that's cool. That's cool. So thanks for that. What parents sticking together in business, right? We're all just kind of juggling everything. The lady I meet, Melanie Brent, she's done some months lately. It's like, yeah, I've got that side of my business, but behind the camera, I'm speaking on laundry and it, my tray and all that. It's not stuff, and I think that form conversation is a really great way of being who people really are. So I'd love to do that a
Yeah.
little more with you today.
Yeah, cool. Looking forward to it.
Great. I wanted to actually jump straight on your blogs when you're reading
Yeah.
um a year, because that just days ago, I believe, that one, or quite recently, that blog. And
Yeah.
I'm actually was like a big, deep conversation kind of person. Uh, and she brought this idea up when we were together over the holidays. And like you said in your blog, I was super resistant to that idea at first. Um, but you got a great process behind it. And it seems to be something you've really embraced. So just, it's 19th of January as we record this one. So maybe where they're this year, how can they start to do this and put a theme on the year ahead?
Yeah, that's a great question. The process I love, and it's great to do it at the start of the year, fresh, and you get that calendar month to calendar year to work with. But you can do this process at any point. Some people like to do it at the end of financial year because that's the way they like to operate. So whatever works for you. But I think it's a really powerful process, and something we don't do enough of is to actually take the time to just have a bit of a reflection on, say, whatever the prior to you creating this new word, having a look at all the things that have happened, because it's actually really easy to just tick off a couple of things and think, oh, I have no idea what I did in the last 12 months. But when you sit down and you go through a process and do it and write it down, it's incredible to see how much stuff you've done. And I often find when you do that process, a theme might sort of start to emerge from that process as well. So we always go through that first. Then you take a bit of an opportunity to say, okay, well, great, we've got all these things, some things perhaps didn't happen that we really want to happen, so let's bring them forward. Some things we ticked off. And maybe there's some things we've learned from the last 12 months, because we're always learning, right? And then how can we bring that into the 12 months going forward? And so my hubby and I do it together as a process. We sort of do some things alone, but then we also then focus very much on, like, what's the joint vision of what we want to get from the next year together. We even do a bit of a reassessment of our values, which usually starts with a big brainstorming session. So literally a big piece of butcher's paper. We both have some Post-its and we kind of go nuts. And then we just put them into themes. Okay, so this is about freedom, this is about business. And you just pull out what are the core values, making sure that we're aligned in our vision in terms of what we're going to do. And then I suppose personally from that's then where the word will often come through. So sometimes you can be as specific as sitting with it and saying, okay, if I was to think of what is the word based on all these kind of conversations that have gone on that is coming to me. I'm sure, as you've seen, a lot of the work I do is intuitively. So whether you just sit and go through a process intuitively of doing that, or whether you have already had something that's going to be my word. And it just, for me, the word, your theme, whatever you might like to call it, it just gives you such a sharp focus. And even at a subconscious level, you'll find that there are things that happen that feed that word. And so I'm always blown away by when I say word, how much all my activities, the outcomes of my year, my business, my family, everything actually dovetails into that word. It's really powerful. And it's just one word, but it's like, you've chosen that word, you've sent it out to the universe, however you believe that, and into motion. So that process we go through, and we usually do it at the start of the year, but whatever works for you.
I love it. What you've done, firstly, to touch on that, it can very easily in a year, and there's been so many external factors in the world that may have changed people's realities, like yourself, like trying to move overseas and then not be able to do it. Looking back, most likely, if you're in any sort of industry or any sort of space where you're listening to this podcast, people would have achieved something, right? They would have moved forwards because they're interested maybe in business, interested in education, or personal. Probably have done something. That's really, really. Creating one word, because I was thinking about this before, and I was like, how am I getting a word that it kind of comes to you intuitively? Yeah. So much of your coaching and your writing actually focuses on that topic of intuition and how people can develop it and use it in their lives. Now, you say that's come to you intuitively. For me, my brain goes completely blank when I think, how do I put all these, health, wealth, and relationship goals into one word, Natasha? And so, first up, can you just give people a definition of kind of what intuition really is and what beneficial skill to be with?
I think it's one of the most underutilized skills that we have at our disposal. And for me, really simply, intuition is that inner wisdom, that inner compass, that inner voice, which is always there to guide you. It's always, everyone has it. And I've never crossed someone hasn't had it, we're very good at blocking it. So that's why having some of these practices and a lot of the work I do with women is about creating those different structures. I've got a range of different tools that we use. We have different ways of kind of getting to our intuition. And then like anything, I always liken it to when you go to the gym and you do a workout and you focus on your bicep and you do lots of bicep curls and you focus on strengthening that muscle. The intuition is much the same. So the more you practice it, the more you tune into your intuition, the better you will get at receiving it. So I think, you know, even when you were saying you've got like all these big things and you're like, well, how on earth would I to one word? Like there's so much more to it. That is probably a lot of that rational brain that's going, oh, you know, and you get into that sort of point of like overthinking, and then you become a bit paralyzed, and then you're like, I give up. Like, and that's actually when the connection to the intuition goes. So taking the time, I would say if you really struggle on your own, you get the help of someone like me, or, you know, someone that you know that can sit with you, and you actually go through a bit of a process of like just taking it back a bit. Like, okay, again, like what did I do last year? What were some of the really cool things that came through? If I hear a theme, what would it be? And then once you start to look at all your activities, like for me, my word last year was growth, and I actually almost forgot. It wasn't like every week I went, okay, growth, growth, growth. I set the word at the start. It was almost a bit of a set in people their word during the year. I kind of just set my word, set some intention around it. But then when I reviewed it at the end of the year, I was like, holy moly, so much of the stuff that happened during the year all fed into this word of growth. And so perhaps even going, okay, well, that was last year. And this is for me this year was like, right, that was growth, and then all these amazing things. And then I was like, so how would I build on that stuff, and what would be the next natural thing? And drop in, and granted, yes, I do intuitive work for a living, so perhaps it comes through a lot easier for me. But I think for you, or someone who's really new to this, just going through that process of like, well, okay, so what are some of the common themes in these goals? Because you will be able to pull out some of the stuff, and just sort of sitting with it for a while. And then even if it doesn't come to you at that very moment where you're like, I need to know what this word is, you could just say, okay, well, word's ready to, I'm ready to hear it. And you might find that you're driving down the road one day and suddenly this word just lands on you and you're like, oh, like, where did that come from? But you've actually set that intention, right? This word is going to come to me. It's based on these things that are really important to me and these activities that I want to follow through this year. It's based on these bigger themes, and then just allow the word to come through. Like some of the women I work with, they have a couple of words, but they're often very interconnected. So like one of the ladies today was heal and flow. So they're her two words that go hand in hand. So it doesn't have to be like one specific word, but I like to keep them punchy as possible.
Totally. Yeah. No, I like it a lot. And it's, exactly the same as when we were going over this conversation with my sister, which was super interesting because it came up. It was actually my sister, Christian, and her word was just going to be prayer. And I was like, surely that's something you do all the time anyway. And she's like, yeah, but I want to be more conscious of it and daily check in with all this. And she had how that came for the year online as well. I can't remember what the, but she was, with like her running, her fitness a lot last year, but in ways that were fun and enjoyable. And she nailed it. She absolutely nailed it, and she sticks to this stuff. For me, I just think of I suppose the three sort of separate areas of my life, and then bringing them together and doing the best I can in each one of them, and not letting. So I guess like balance or something like that would be a pretty good theme. I'm trying to enjoy as much as possible, help my business to grow as much as possible, and then stay as fit as I can. And the three. But it seems like a bit of feels like a bit of a cliche word. That's when my head probably comes in and overthinks it. I'm not really much of an over person, so you've turned me into one today. So thanks for that.
I think you got that, Alex. I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon that's word. So, and I think sometimes we get hung up on the word because people say, oh, I've even had women say, oh, I wanted a better word than that, or, oh, that's, like, I don't know what that means. But actually, what it means to you in terms of balance, and you just perfectly described it. They're the three things or three core areas of your life that are really important to you and where you're going to focus. And if just at the balance is the thing that you just keep coming back to, all your activity, it's so much bigger than that. Like all your activities, the energy you put into stuff, how you do your work, how you structure your day, how you structure your week, it's all going to feed back to this idea of balance. And you'll notice more when you're out of balance because you're like, oh shit, things have gone a bit heavy into the business space and I haven't been spending as much time with the twins or whatever it might be. But I think, sometimes people do get a bit stuck on, oh, I don't know, that's a bit of I wanted a cooler word than that. But if you know what it means for you and all your activities center around that, then yeah, or you could start with balance and say, okay, well, this is the intent. Is there another word that speaks to me more? And just allow yourself to sit with that as well. So yeah, it's fun.
Really cool. If I may, it seems a lot of my coaching, because I'm not that, as dad, more sort of masculine. I've got women, my two daughters. Like you go to that hyper rational, logically masculine way of looking at things, and the intuition vibe, it's like feminine, a feminine. To okay, balance is like one word be all encompassing. Intuition thing. Do you find that there's as much of a demand for this from men as women, or have you gone down the coaching for a specific reason? What situation to be a more feminine concept overall?
I think just naturally I attract, maybe in the way I tell my stories and just the fact before I'm a mum myself, so probably a lot of my branding and my relatable parts of what I share are linked back to that. I do actually have some male clients, but I'd say like my primary focus would be more on women, more just because that's what I know. And I guess a lot of my work echoes the journey I'm on as well. So my own, challenges and ups and downs of being a woman and a mum and a business owner and wife and all the other roles that I play. So it just, I guess, more easily fits. Although interestingly, when you talk about masculine and feminine energy, actually sit more in my masculine energy. And so just by way of explaining that, I am more of a doer. So I actually like to-do lists. I like structure. I like getting stuff done. I am actually really good at, like, you put some tasks in front of me and I'll get them done. So the feminine side of me, even though I'm a woman, the female, is the part I have to work on. And so that's interesting. I work with intuition, but that's the side I need to nurture more, the flow, the creativity, the expression, just like letting things go a little bit. And so, because you need both, right? You need to have your masculine and your feminine, and balance funnily part of that. And I always liken it to, I tell the story about if you think about your feminine and your masculine as a glass of water. So the water is actually the feminine. So that's the flow, that's the creative, that's the nourishing. And then you've got the glass, which is actually the masculine. So that's the container, it's the structure, it holds the form. And so if you don't have the container and it's just a hot mess all over the counter, it doesn't do anything. And if you've just got the masculine, you've just got an empty container, an empty vessel, and it's got no substance, it's got no creativity, it's got no energy to it. So you actually need the two together. And so it's just a nice way to think of like your balancing of your feminine and masculine. So even in your household, even though you've got a strong female presence, you might, depending on how you operate, find that you still spend a lot of time in your masculine. And I dare say a lot of people are heavy in their masculine because of the world we live in. It's a very masculine focused, it's about doing and achieving and getting stuff done and not sitting idle. So the feminine sometimes gets a little bit neglected.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. As on this podcasts in the coaching world. I'm not about that much myself to, but the more I talk with people about feminine thing, it becomes and like I I used to be I am a creative guy, but I used to be high school, playing bands and do art, kind of and that sort of thing. And I just don't do any of it anymore. I kind of I consume a lot of. I still love music. I don't play music. I definitely don't consume or create art anymore in that sense. And I feel like I'm mostly a doer. And my female presence in the household has turned me into more of a doer. And I'm trying to think, where does my feminine energy come in? I'm a very, very keen. Well, I used to be a chef, so I love cooking. And I think when I'm kind of the two things that kind of bring me back to, if I've had a stressful day or whatever, get me out of my head, are one, going down and checking on my vegetable garden, but that's also very result driven. I find, like, oh god, my cucumbers aren't flowering as much as I want them to. But when I'm cooking, because I can be very kind of intuitive and just throw a bit of this, bit of that, and it turns out well. And so I think that's probably where it comes out. That's my intuitive area. I'm cooking, writing, I'm writing like copy. These two areas, they flow pretty easily. So yeah, I feel like you're coaching me now. I feel like this has turned into a nice little coaching where I'm learning a lot about myself. So thank you, Natasha.
Well, I'm not teaching you anything.
That water
This
analogy.
is what I always say. Yes, it's a good one, isn't it?
That was so good. So good.
It helps it and to in mind as well. It certainly helps me, and yeah, it never fails when I explain that to people. Like, yeah, okay, I get that, and I get why you need both.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've got plenty of feminine going on. Maybe bringing some of that art back and looking at some of that other expression. But my sister's a chef, and she absolutely speaks to everyone and shows her love through her love of cooking. She's never happier than. It's not what she does for a job for her career anymore. She's high up in BHP, which is funny, but she loves cook, and yeah, you see her come alive when she does that. So yeah, the feminine energy comes through, and the garden, the nurturing, like grow more feminine than that. Even if you're telling your cucumbers they're not growing fast enough.
yeah. Well, I'll sit. I've got books galore. So I'll be like, okay, this zucchini only have male zucchinis. Some attract some bees. I've got a notebook. Yeah, I've got like a freaking guy. I know. Turns me into a real. I can believe it. Like this far away from black, so that you see carrying a folder around with me. Oh my word! But it's a lot of fun though. Well, this actually brings me on to the next thing I really wanted to ask you, Tash, which is because so far today, and vision, a lot of these words and these techniques are things that they don't get thrown around that much in, normal day-to-day conversation and society outside of this sort of coaching and personal development world. You yourself on your website, you've mentioned that you practice in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, in timeline therapy, in Reiki, and these are definitely techniques that I don't imagine many people outside of my coaching circles have heard of. Maybe Reiki. People, outside of personal development and coaching, muggles, as we call them, they often don't get this work. And what I find, and it's a constant sort of uphill battle in marketing, is that when you ask a coach, often a newer coach, what do you do and how do you help people, they can jump into these huge paragraphs about facilitating transformations and to align their clients' core empowering beliefs with their unique realms of spirituality, and they do that through one of these three techniques, and people kind of glaze over because they don't get it. Now, for someone who's so knowledgeable and so practiced in this space. How do you go about explaining the benefits of what you do to an average Jane out there who is just really trying to live her best life?
Yeah. Well, the simple way I do it is, and it's how my whole business started, was actually by just telling my own story. And so I really struggle with the idea of being the expert or the, um, I really see myself more as the person that's just there for the person to just reflect back what they already know about themselves. They just don't give themselves the time to see it. And I find a really non-confrontational way of doing that is by talking about myself. So I've had to make this commitment really early on that I would be really authentic. I would tell the truth about what's happening in my life. Even when they're not, they don't put me in the prettiest light, or I show where I've had my challenges and my failings and my learnings. I've showed where I've grown. And so my weekly blog is definitely how that all started, and actually is what kind of got me into working with women. I kind of fell into it, like, literally, off the back of a health scare. And then in this whole process of, like, realizing that I didn't know who I was anymore, I had no idea what to do about it, I had no tools to fix or to find myself, I started writing this blog, started reaching out to me too, or sharing, like, I could never talk about that, but I'm so glad someone else has, because, it makes me realize I'm not alone. And so it just really kind of unfolded really organic. I just one day said, right, I'm going to coach women, and I'm going to do. And from there, I've obviously gone, and I've really enjoyed learning new tools and doing training. But to be honest, a lot of that, the incentive is still about, like, going and finding, oh, okay, there's something here that's not right. I do to go and learn more about myself, and then just sharing it. So yeah, I guess we all have our tools and our tricks, but for me, just trying to just keep telling my story, share it from my perspective. A lot of the work I do when I work with groups and work with women, I talk about an illustration from my point of view of what's happened with me, and it makes it really easy to hear then, and then allows them the time to take from it what they will, and and then when they're ready to do more of the the techniques and things, then we can get to that. But a lot of the work is self-awareness, is just raising your awareness on what actually makes you tick and what's going on in your world and what are some of the stories. So again, always comes back to just tell it what's happening with Tash, and just share her story.
Story, super powerful, right? And relatability, like, it keeps coming back to that. The relatability it must be so refreshing for ladies watching your movements and reading your blog, to have someone being open and honest and raw, when everything else out there is people's best curated photo that they've posted on Instagram, right? Like, all we see is the best of people's lives. I'm totally guilty of doing that, but I try to make a point when I post good photos of making a joke around the fact that I only post good photos, because I'm aware of it. But I also don't have a brand around kind of helping people with that side. But I see women, mostly women, and a couple of my male clients post things that I would be like mortified to post. And I think so much strength in it, and yeah, that's really really cool that people love that. So your marketing journey, you weren't even trying to do this business. You just kind of shared your story, and then how did that first client come about? Where was the conversation you kind of offered a service and exchange?
Yeah, I think I did it all wrong in terms of, like, the coaching structure. I've learned since actually going and doing training that you're supposed to start with one-on-one clients and then build up to a group base. But I did it, and I come from a background in community building and relationship building, and one of my absolute loves is community. That's one of my values. So I think it just came more naturally that I started with a group program, and gosh, I can't even remember exactly how it came together, but I think I just started to go through a bit of a process myself, and I came up with some topics that I would focus on each week, and then I kind of practiced them on myself, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I want to try it with a few. test the waters. And so I just gathered, I think it was 4 women initially. They came into a small group container, took them through this 4-week process. And then since then, I've kind of replicated that program and then just gradually added on. I've learned new. I found that there's other areas where, women where there's gaps, I suppose, with the women I work with. And yeah, now I do a combination of one-to-one and, to be honest, I love the group stuff. Like other people are like, oh, group, like it's not for them. But for me, I would just do group stuff all day long if I had the choice.
Totally. Group stuff from, I think, lens you look at it, group programs. One, from a time more leverage, but two, people, your own clients starting to kind of become mates outside of your hour a week that you spend with them. Really cool, right? When you see, I hopped into one of my group coaching sessions yesterday, and 2 of the clients were like, "Yeah, we were talking about this morning," and I was like, "That's so cool that you're kind of working together outside of this container that I've created." So well done on doing that. And so now you're doing. Is your one-to-one coaching a kind of the next step up from your group? Do they need to go through the group coaching to kind of get to the one-on-one? Is that like the more premium of the products? How does that model work?
No, they don't have to go through one to get to the other. They're kind of standalone. I only set a certain number of spaces available for the one-to-one for some of the reasons you mentioned. Like it's obviously a lot more intensive. It's just not where I feel like I give my energy the best. I mean, yeah, obviously I always give my all to my clients, but for me, I'd rather focus and, being a mum of 3, I fit my business in the rest of life. And so where I have the choice, I energy in the group. The option, they can just do the group, or they can take the option to do some alongside, or you can just do one-on-one on the side. But I'm pretty careful about just sticking with a certain number of one-to-ones, and whereas the group is one-to-many, so I can grow that group to be as big as you like, and all online. So I had the benefit of starting my business during the height of COVID lockdowns, which in WA was slightly different timeframes to other parts of the world. But so I've actually done a lot of my delivery has been online. Really enabled me to just continue to show up online. Benefit of being able to talk to people who are in different parts of the world. I really have a vision for reaching women wherever they are that would connect with me and not being limited by my geographical locations. So online space is amazing for that. I hope that answers the question. I feel like I digressed a little bit then.
That's what podcasts are all about, Ask a question, you find yourself, who knows where you're going to go with a podcast. It's great. We're just here to facilitate and have a chat and try to keep it interesting, which is it's certainly interesting to me today, hearing about the way you've created a business out of a blog. And it feels like what happened was you created the blog happened, and people like, oh, these, prospect, but like that at the time, and it, a product for them, rather than the way that a lot of people do it is they go out and say, I'm creating a coaching program and then find customers for that. The way that you've done it is so much more effective because people want it. You create content and modules and lessons out of what people want and need. And just before we go, like, what are some of your favorite results that you've seen people get from the work they've done with you?
I feel like one of the biggest things that women have across the board, this happens a lot, is where they come in and they've got a real loss of sense of who they are. They're very lost in that they are now life, and they have this, role as a career or a business. Maybe they're a mum. They're the friend, the helper. And so if you take all those roles away and you ask them, okay, well, who person that's left and what does she love? What lights her up? What are her passions? what's her kind of purpose, and they don't know. And then you go through this journey and they kind of get to take some of these, like, they have the luxury of like, okay, let's just take that cloak off for a little while, let's just take that one off and let's just see what happens. And they get to the other end of it, they still have all those roles, they're not going anywhere, but that sense of like who they are and what they can do to help to stay connected to that person, that is just one of the, across the board, the strongest things that I see with the women I work with. So that real sense of lost, which is exactly my journey. So lost in my roles. Didn't even know what had happened. Like, it's a bit like the frog in boiling water. It's like, well, why didn't you jump out at some point? Wasn't it getting, uncomfortable? So I didn't realize it kind of crept up on me to the point where then I was cooked, literally. And then, coming out the other side, and you suddenly got this renewed sense of like, oh, okay, so this is who Tash is. And, that's a lot of what the women I work with say, that they've really found that. And they to, even if they lose themselves a little bit again, because inevitably life comes along and things get busy and, you do get waylaid, but they have the ability to come back to, okay, well, these are some of the things that like really or that I can do for myself to just keep that connection in that center. And that flows out into all parts of your life. And that goes for anyone, not just women, of course.
Yeah, there's definitely a question you ask when it's like what, and you're helping shift away from and figure out who they were before they before they salary, right? And be that very, very that's into that space. Thank you so much for telling us about it.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's been really nice to chat with you.
Well, absolute pleasure. And best of luck with moving back to New A. When are you thinking of doing it?
Well, hopefully later this year. So you'll have to watch this space.
I'm really interested in this country, and just checking out whether it's a good, is it a good holiday destination? Can you just go there?
I was going to say, wait until we're there and then reach out, because we can, show you around locally. But if you like scuba diving, if you like any kind of outdoor activities like fishing, swimming, that sort of stuff, fresh food, then it's the place for you. If you prefer more like hotels and shops and movies, then it's probably not the place for you. That kind of outdoorsy. But you said you're gardening and stuff, so I think it would really vibe with you. Absolutely.
I feel like I'll have to take my wife and daughters to the Hilton in Fiji and then skip across myself for a day in UA so I can do some scuba diving and eat some raw fish, that sort of thing. And while they so
yeah, sounds good.
But I can't wait, Tash. Tash Hanham, thank you so much for being with us today. We're going to be everywhere, so what you do, and fun.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex.
And everyone who's watching or listening, we really appreciate that. Back to 2023. Exciting. We've got no intention of going anywhere with this podcast, so we love that you're here. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back next week with another episode of Coaches to the Moon. Until then, see you later. Much love and peace out.